Morning, or whatever time frame it is for y'all's where you're at. Hello. Hi. Hey. I'm gonna try to get Roni in here as soon as I see. Oh, there. Did I? Did it work? Hey, Roni. Um, right before we start, I just want to do my typical blurb that I do in the beginning, which is if you can do your daily heart me, which is the orange heart. Thank you, watching lady, up on top. That would be fantastic. If you cannot do that, then you can just double tap on on the side, and it is on your screen and does those double hearts that some folks just did. You could also share. I don't know where the share button is now. I used to have a share button on the bottom, but y'all might see a share button. Or if you feel comfortable, you could also give gifts to either myself or Ronnie. What's another thing? Oh yeah. And if you have, oh, thanks, Ronnie. If you have, if you would like to subscribe to me, I think you're able to subscribe somewhere on here. It has that option for y'all's. Okay, that's it. Hey, Ronnie, what? You're what? An hour ahead of me?
Two.
Two
Yeah.
hours? Okay, 2 hours ahead of me.
Yeah.
Did you ever figure out how to turn your camera on over here?
No, so I reread the little message that goes up when I attempt, and I think what happens is if a person or a guest does not have 1,000 followers yet, we can't use video.
Oh, what? You don't have 1,000 followers yet, Ronnie?
No,
Where are you? Where are you? What number are you at?
like at like less than 200.
What?
Yeah, dude.
Oh, it's because people don't know you yet.
Well, yeah,
It is
yeah. I
because
mean, like I
you would.
haven't.
I mean,
I've had TikTok for a while, but I've never like posted actively. So like this is like the first time.
oh, that's why. Yes.
Yeah.
Now
So
that now that you've done these things, for sure, I feel like people are finding you and they will follow you because my word.
yeah.
Um,
I mean, I appreciate
I'm
that.
excited for you when you hit 1,000 because then I mean then you'll go live, right? Will
Yeah,
you
I
go
mean,
live once you hit 1,000?
I'll do, yeah, I'll do my best. I mean, I do definitely, I prefer having group conversations. That just tends to be my preference because I like having multiple voices going at once. I feel weird about it just being myself. I think, honestly, that's also, I think, why I started and see the way that I did. Like, I purposefully went to see if friends would join me, even though it was my initial idea, just because, like, I don't want it to be like an echo chamber, you know? So
Yeah.
yeah, it was yeah. But yeah, I would definitely be keen, but I'd probably just be bugging people to join me the entire time.
Well, I mean, I'm sure nobody will feel bugged. They probably would love to join you. And it does look like um, there are folks that just have chosen to follow you right now, which is so exciting.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
And plus, I've been seeing your posting like videos, so it's now there are things that folks can check out,
Yeah.
which is kind of exciting there as well. Um, and Ho Ho said it's weird at first, but gets easier the more people that follow and ask questions. Yeah. Like,
Sure.
you know what's so funny? It's when I had done, when I first started doing lives, like I obviously was by myself, but I've never felt by myself because there were always folks that had questions,
Right.
and or comments, and I would read those out loud. And so those were the ways to get other voices into the mix.
Yeah.
And the other, but then you're right though. When I do have guests or do I have folks join me, I do like it because it feels like really much richer in conversation.
Right.
But I know that you, in the last time we were together, you got a chance to have a bunch of folks maybe message you and send you some stuff. And one of the things that what was in one of your videos was this discussion around gossip and
Yeah.
how gossip is information, and yet we have to also be really responsible about like how we disseminate or how we choose to disseminate that information and the lessons we can get from Lady Whistledown. And so I just didn't, so I'm just kind of teeing it up and just wanting to see what you wanted to first share around that conversation. And we can kind of go back and forth a little bit and maybe look at if to see if folks have any questions or thoughts.
Sure. I think the main thing that it just kind of triggered that thought was just again, just seeing the conversation that was kind of going back and forth on some of the fracturing that we were seeing, like just internally in the fandom with all of the gossip talk that had been going on, particularly everything going on around the talent in their personal lives, which has absolutely nothing to do with the job itself. And my like thought process just kind of evolved to like, isn't the whole point of what we're digesting on the show revolves around gossip and how that impacts everything? I know we've been fixated on like the romance of it all because, you know, priorities. But that's like, it's such a central theme, and something that I know Nicola probably really tried to, you know, bring across with the evolution of Lady Whistledown and how everything just kind of ended with season 3, and how she's going to, you know, really just be more responsible. And that's just it. Like the way she just kind of started from an emotional place, you know, getting information out there, sometimes not, you know, the best. But like you mentioned to me in our messages, based in truth, because as she said, she never lies. But she was coming from a place of like hearing things firsthand. Usually gossip, once it gets, like you said, disseminated to a certain degree, it's all just damn hearsay, because it's like playing telephone. And before you know it, there's a whole other thing going around. Yeah, but just taking her character and that kind of analysis and that evolution of just like once she transitioned into a more grown up woman and really digesting it, and like when she releases that paper that counteracts Cressida's paper, and she releases like 3 tidbits of information, that's stuff that needs to get out. Like people are behaving really, really badly to the point where they're actually hurting other people, and that's the information that went out. I think that just kind of showcases like prioritizing, I guess, the prioritizing of sharing of information and being careful about how you share that.
Yeah, because I think about right when those two, well, like right when the version of Lady Whistledown from Cressida came out, and this is what I said to you in the DM, right, was that she chose to lie about things, and that's what
Yep.
why Penelope's like, I've never chosen to lie. Like even at the worst of the things that she chose to disclose, like it was still based in truth. Even when she had talked to Colin about like why she wrote what she wrote, it still was, well, I mean, I guess based on the truth of how she saw it as well. I would say that it was truth, but I guess it's still kind of an opinion to some degree about Colin. But at the same time, I think majority of the folks would agree in her assessment, I suppose. I do. I think deep down Colin did as well.
Yeah,
But
that's why he was triggered.
yeah, yeah, because he knew there was truth in there, and that's sometimes difficult to swallow. I mean, and so when we're taking lessons from a show and going, okay, so what was how did Penelope work through her evolution of finding out, okay, yes, this is truthful things. Yes, I know this information. However, when it starts to hurt people, like, you know, how do you, well, I guess my question is, what do you think is the lessons on how she figured out what is beneficial to share with the masses and what are things that are best left more private because it has more detrimental impact to be exposed to people who are not involved in the issue?
I'm hoping they showcase some of that in season 4, because I'm curious on how they're actually going to bring that across. I'm not a book reader, so I don't even know if they touched on this in the books. If anyone can actually say, I'd be very curious to know if there's background on this within the books themselves, if the way that she shared information changed at all, or if this is just an extra layer that they changed for the show. Because one, there's a lot of relevancy, particularly with society today and how quickly stuff spreads. So I think it is nice that they added this into the show because it is relevant, particularly with social media. But I'm curious how they're going to handle it for the show. I feel like it's just her, because she started seeing it in like impact her own personal life, and particularly with how Colin reacted to it and seeing how hurt he was, that probably created a major shift because she's just like, there's clearly consequences to this. I could potentially lose the man that I love because of how hurt he is by this. Because in all honesty, everything beforehand, she never even dreamed that she was going to be with him. You know, so like she didn't even think that that was a possibility. And it was just a way for her to just kind of get her emotions out on paper. And ultimately, that's just it. It's just like, if you're feeling emotional, maybe it's a good thing to like step back, take a breath, maybe before you start writing.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
but
Or
which
at least don't get it printed.
yeah, which again, like if you think about it, like more than if you go on Twitter, more than half of
Hmm.
that is just emotional griping, which you're like, what are you going through? Like breathe a little bit. So yeah.
Yeah, it actually reminds me of a conversation I had with my brother when I was heard about something. This was my Facebook days, and I had posted something. Um, and my brother and I don't necessarily see eye to eye about many things, but his statement to me still rang true to me. And his point to me was like don't post when you're in a place where it's coming out of a place of anger or
Yep.
hurt or frustration. Just because you're going to say things you cannot take back.
Yep.
And he wasn't wrong. Um, Real quick side note, Ronnie, I'm seeing it in the chat and I do want to address it real quick. Is this Luke account on X right now? And is it real or not? That just posted something today, I think. And the thing is, it says it's verified, but ever since X took over, I
Yes.
don't trust any verification, to be honest, on X anymore because there's always been a bunch of like things. But the thing is, I think this might have been his original account, maybe back in the day. I don't know. It says this account has existed since 2013, but there's no tweets on it anymore, and it's just the last three tweets or something. But it's things that I feel like you Google and you put like, when like you're feeling hurt about something and you Google and you put in a quote. It doesn't seem like Luke, only because I feel like Luke is kind of funny and cheeky and like when you read his old tweets, there was like his personality into it. And I just feel like I don't. And so all I will say is I hold it with a grain of salt. I understand that this is listed under a verified account. I'm not, but I don't know. I don't know what your thoughts are on it, Ronnie. I don't know if you've seen it yet, but I just the only reason I'm like a little hesitant to believe it's Luke is one, why would you return to X? Like he left X because of how toxic it was right before the season begins, and it's not any less toxic. It's probably more toxic now. In the fandom, and so why would he subject himself to that? So I don't think it's him, but at the same time I'm like, it does fall under a verified account, but then again, it
No.
is X, and I've seen a lot of fake verified accounts.
Yeah.
Been a lot of bots there that's been given credence, so
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Anything that Elon touches, just stay away from it. That's just my own personal take. Yeah, no, I don't think any of that is legit. I feel like Luke would know by now. He got rid of it for a reason. Once it
Hmm.
gets to a certain point, it's just gonna keep spiraling. I don't think it's a good space for him. Even if he gets curious and he like dips in and out, he has people he can probably just ask, "Hey, how is it out there?" And they're like, "Just stay away."
Okay, and actually, Conklin 1987 said the username is different than his old one. Okay, that's good to know. Because I couldn't remember. I couldn't remember what his if it because this one is like the one that I think I've seen, which is Luke Newton UK, but this
Yeah.
one has an underscore at the end of it. So
Yeah, I
yeah,
wouldn't if the talent like explicitly says we're leaving, the likelihood of them coming back to a platform is slim. I'm not saying it's impossible, but they would announce
hmm,
it because they would want to make sure that people are following the right account.
that's true. Yeah, I mean, I felt like there was a lot of red flags. Um, there was a lot of red flags that I saw at least in 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 what was being posted.
Right.
It just aside from the fact that one, I just didn't think Luke would be coming back to X, and two, um, it just doesn't sound like Luke.
Right.
Um, so, someone said maybe it's this way to remain anonymous.
Mhm.
By using a name, is it?
Yeah, no.
Wait, I mean, by using Luke Newton UK underscore. I mean, I don't know if that's keeping anonymous unless you're talking about something else. Because that definitely doesn't sound like an anonymous way to. It's usually like user number 100 and da 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 da. Usually,
Yeah,
um,
I think they may be referencing that though because he did have like his sneaky Instagram account. I think from Tiff's live was it wasn't very subtle.
oh,
But as I say, I think he has a little bit more experience now.
hopefully, yeah,
Yeah, and I mean, people, people are have other things to do. I don't necessarily think he'd be poking around Twitter, particularly knowing how sensitive he reacted to even folks giving him a hard time from what his character did at the end of
yes,
season two.
yes,
To let alone now, like I was feeling really bad for him when stuff started spiraling because like I can't even imagine how he's
yeah.
feeling.
I mean, personally, just from what this person is posting, um, I just don't personally think it's him. I mean, the person is not posting anything like negative. It just seems like Google quotes, you know.
Right.
So it's not anything like that would look poorly on Luke if it was Luke that was point like, but it just doesn't sound like Luke.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like how funny he is or how like the way he thinks and the way he speaks. It just doesn't read like him. So it does feel like somebody trying to get followers,
Yeah.
um, which is I feel like so many people have been trying to get followers on certain platforms through trying to manipulate the fan base into curiosity
Yep.
of stuff that has no validity.
Yep.
So,
We've gotten to that point
but
because of just the size of the fandom, just because of the popularity of the content. I think it got progressively worse. Because again, with the first season, we were in the middle of a pandemic, and with the second season, we had to deal with the strike, and now with this third one, it's just been like someone opened the floodgates, and it just grew exponentially. We see it in the numbers, which we'll get the update tomorrow?
yeah,
Yeah,
by noon, I think, my time at least, noon my time,
yeah,
which is kind of exciting to be able to see. So going back to the actual topic of the
yeah.
conversation, I just had to address that because I know it's something new and something that's been popping up, and I did want to address it before. Um, I just wanted to address it, but I will say too, the fascination of the Ton with gossip, and the Queen's desire to, I guess, what is well, I mean, how would you describe the Queen's relationship with Lady Whistledown with everything that's going on and how she kind of almost gave that approval or okay to continue what's happening at the final episode of Bridgerton
I
season
think
3.
I think that was all thanks to Lady Danbury because she really just kind of spelled it out for her of just like I think Lady Whistledown just makes it very interesting for the Queen. Plus, that's like almost also how she's keeping up with her subjects. Like, how else would she know what's going on?
Mm.
I mean, she could have her footmen and all the other any other minions that she might have at her disposal to like sneak around and stuff. But it's it's also one of those things where like only the style that Lady Whistledown has and disseminating information similar like only a woman can do.
Mm.
Similar to like how Violet said in first season when she was getting information on Burbrook to save Daphne, just as like, let the women talk. That's another good way of like a successful use of gossip, because it's just like, someone was gonna get hurt, and that was the only tool that they had on hand to save this girl from like a horrible marriage to this horrible man. So yeah, I think there's definite examples there of like the plus side of gossip and then the downside of gossip. And I think it's, like I mentioned last night on my short video, it's really, really easy to just fall prey to wanting to just kind of roll around in the mud when you're in a space that gives you permission to behave badly. Because it's just really easy to fall into the trap, because it's really tempting, because all you want to do is be part of a group, to be included. And so if you're in that space, you get in and you see everyone mudslinging, and you're like, oh wow, we can mudsling here. And then you just kind of fall into the trap. And
Oh,
yeah, go ahead.
oh no, it made me think about the fact that gossip is connecting and it's also disconnecting.
Yep.
Like, I mean, in the sense of like, I've seen people connect, and I've even connected, right, over gossip. And it's like, oh, you know things, I know things, da 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 da. And it's fun. But you know how like people say, I hate drama, but they mean like I hate it when it's my own drama?
Yeah.
Like, so sometimes that's what I've seen with gossip, right? People think it's all fun and games until they're the ones getting gossiped about.
Yep.
And then they're realizing, and just kind of like what you said about Penelope, it's that realization that once suddenly it impacted her, and she realizes how it feels to be on the receiving end of that. It isn't fun. It just isn't fun. And sometimes that's the thing that really I come back to. Like, if I was the person people are talking about, how would I feel? Because there's no fun in that. There's no fun in being talked about and being minimized or diminished or made fun of or mocked or picked apart, or, and it's really, it's really interesting, because sometimes the ones that can sometimes provide the harshest of assessments of folks, also are the ones that cannot take it to have any assessment of themselves. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's really, so it's an interesting thing of like, I really do think a lot about like, how would I feel if this was me? And the things that I have seen done to Luke, or said about Luke, or said about anybody else, I'm like, I would never want to have that, and people can say, well, if you don't want people to talk about that, then don't act like this. No, I mean, everybody is a human being, and everybody has a right to make a decision. Yes, people will have an opinion on it and things of that nature. You can't stop people from having opinions, but we can stop ourselves from it's, how do I describe it? There's a certain point in social media where you can't have the same conversations that you have offline. The damage is much larger online.
Yeah.
You can have a good conversation offline, but the minute it goes online, it can create a storm that even if the person who started it cannot stop. And to me, I always say, I am a person who thinks about the reality of the responsibility that falls on me as a content creator, about what kind of environment I create and what kind of things I say to people is okay to do, and how much I'm willing to hold that responsibility if it goes awry.
Right.
And obviously I can't control other people, and at the end of the day, they're responsible for their reactions and the things that they do. But it would also be foolish of me to say that I don't understand that if I'm careless, that I can't do damage with my platform. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I think we can have a like this conversation can easily branch off into particularly like how to manage content creating, because the big thing with being mindful and all of this stuff, like we talked about previously, was creating this safe space. There is a way to do this responsibly. If you want your content to be more about talking about like this other like more private stuff, create a Discord or put it behind a paywall somehow where only people who want to talk about that stuff kind of can get behind, but they do it still in like a safe space. Because if you're putting it out there publicly, as we say all the time, the internet is forever, guys. Even if you go and delete it, I bet you if it was a controversial topic enough, someone has clipped it. Someone has clipped it, and if they have bad intentions, will inevitably repost it and repost it and repost it and share it to other people, and it'll just keep going and going and going ad infinitum. So like like it's just the main thing is to try to prevent, particularly with something as frivolous as been talked about with Luke, and that man has not hurt anybody. There is no, like, he's hurt no one. He is simply living his life. And the way he's been trashed, it's like he committed murder.
Yeah.
It's just, it's out of control. Like, and ultimately, none of this stuff should be getting back to him, but it probably already has at this stage, which is probably why he's gone all silent and stuff. And so I wouldn't blame him if he just shuts down all his social media altogether at a certain point. People have shut down their social media for less. So yeah, I mean, we've already seen Nick and Luke shift away from Twitter. So they've done it before. There's a history there where they were like, yeah, we're out. That could have been due to the X takeover, because I don't know what the timeline is on that. Or it could have been prior to, just because they saw just how toxic it was getting with whatever backlash he was getting. But yeah, I think that back to your original question about the queen. I think her relationship will be really, really interesting. I'm curious how they're going to play that with the Lady Whistledown situation. But I feel that the queen herself, after the conversation with Lady Danbury, saw that there was value for her there. And then upon getting Penelope's letter and interacting with Penelope at the end, I'll be very curious how that dynamic is going to keep going forward, with Penelope now shifting to a more responsible pen. I'm curious how the rest of the Ton is going to interact with her. Like, I feel like it's not going to be that smooth of a transition, because everyone is going to know, like they know if she's ever said anything bad about them, they're going to be careful around her. There's absolutely no way. Like, as soon as you see Penelope enter a room, can you imagine? Everyone's just going to stop talking. At least that would be my inclination if I was part of the Ton.
Yeah, because I mean, some folks said that they felt like it was just wrapped up with a neat little bow at the end of episode 8. But I mean, Penelope gives hint, right? Like, it's not over.
Yeah.
And I think that is a nod to season 4 and why I anticipate them to still be a fairly good portion, hopefully, of season 4. That there is a storyline built in there for them. And I just wanted to say real quick too about, like, you know, you want to create a smaller community sometimes with some of the things if you want to have those conversation. And I think that that's why, like, it has helped to have like a small group of folks who have chosen to be subscribers, because it does make me feel like I can still post some stuff where I'm like trying to think about stuff, but I'm like, but I don't want to put it to the larger audience because it goes wild, right?
Yeah.
But when it's a small subscriber ship, like, I can ask y'all to pick your brain on a particular post and think have your investigations or have your thoughts around it, because I prefer that than putting it all out to a larger audience that might not have the desire to, like, engage with it in a way that is kind, in a way that is measured, because the minute it goes totally out. And that's why I remember I had a post that I had put out that if I had subscribers back then, I probably would have just put in my subscriber one instead of putting it out to everybody, because I ended up doing a live. I came back, and when I came back, one of the posts was at 10K views and one was at 24K views. That should not happen for my account size when it was just up for an hour, right? Like, I know how, like, a regular sized account should get views by a certain amount of time, and that was too fast for me. And I was like, oh, it's getting out. So I
Yeah.
had to, and I wasn't. And I had just finished talking about it in the live, saying I would love it for us to keep this like here. And then I was like, oh, bless. But I mean, even then, Ronnie, like, right? It's been out, like it was out for an hour. I'm sure that if somebody thought it was cute enough or cool enough, they would have videotaped it. But it's kind of like the same way that Nicola had that video and she put it down, right? People still clipped it and people still share it, but she was able to cut it off at the source. And
Yep.
so, yeah, people can still see it here and there, but she made sure that it wouldn't have the reach that it would have if she kept it up.
Right. Yeah. No, agreed.
So, anyways, let me see if I missed any questions here, and feel free to continue any additional thoughts you had if um
Um,
as a
yeah, I think just finding that balance on how you're downloading information, and again, just depending on the space that you're in and the particular topic that's being talked about. People are curious. It's an inevitability. And like you mentioned, people will judge. It's within our nature because we're all judging from what our understanding is, what our limited experience is. But you have to take into consideration that everyone has a vastly different experience and processes things very, very differently. And you have absolutely no control over how someone is living their life. Regardless on what you think is best for them, you don't know them. You can't
yeah.
impose that on someone else. And again, you can make that judgment, you can share it with your friends and everything, but just it's so difficult to do that on social media in a respectful and responsible way to where things aren't taken out of context or made 10 times worse. And it just shouldn't. It's a danger for you as an individual as well, because then a lot of people can kind of just jump on you, and then you end up being forced off of an internet interaction or a particular group, or you end up being gaslit or whatever because you're feeling a particular way. So it's just really messy. So it's just better to just stay away from that altogether. And when it gets into like mean girl territory too, it's so high school. It's just like most of the fandom, we're all grown. And I mean, if you were like in the mean girl category when you were in high school, like it might be time to just kind of graduate from that. But I mean, it's just about creating just like that healthy space and trying to keep that healthy mindset. Yeah, I know it's tough, and it's very, very tempting to fall into it. I get it. I understand the temptation. I'm not saying I've never done it, but it's just the practice of it all and the growing up of it all, to determine what it is that keeps you peaceful online.
And I will also say that that I have found it's not necessarily even about age, more than I think how people have been able to process their own
Yeah.
experiences in life and how much they've processed their own pain and their
Yeah.
own hurt. Because, part of the appeal of gossip, especially when it's not about us, and why people, I think, sometimes lean into gossip, um, is it's almost sometimes a way to work out people's issues
Hmm.
without having it feel fully personal, even though usually how they're sorting it out is usually personal.
Right.
Because people tend to see how people tend to be like, how would I respond or how would I experience this? Not in the sense of like the thinking of how it impacts people that's being talked about, more than it impacts, they're thinking about like, oh, that this is the reason I'm mad at this person, is if somebody did this to me or what I think this person did, then I would be feeling this way. And I've said it and I will say it a million times. Somebody called it like one of my Phoebe-isms, but I really I really do believe that every emotion is valid. It's just information that informs that emotion that might be incorrect. And sometimes people feed themselves incorrect information that just gets them so angry. And the anger is true and real based off of the information that they're telling themselves, but the information itself might be incorrect.
Correct.
And so sometimes just because something is true does not mean it's worthwhile to consume or um to spread.
Yeah,
And I think sometimes people feel like if it's true, why can't we say it? Because well, there's a lot of true things
yeah,
that's not worth saying.
right. Well, yeah, because ultimately, if it's if it's not impacting a larger scale of things, if it's literally just this one person and it's their thing, like why does it matter so much? Like, just would you want to be under, like, living under a microscope like that, where every little decision that you make is being scrutinized like that? It's like an episode of Black Mirror, where I don't know if you guys have seen it, where, and I don't remember which season it is, but there's like, society has evolved to where there's a ranking function, and so the way you live your life is literally analyzed down to how many likes you get on that day with all of your face-to-face interact. Imagine what kind of nightmare of like, I can't even, it just makes my skin crawl just thinking about it. But that's literally what we're doing online already.
Oh yeah.
That's literally what it is.
I mean,
Go
sorry.
ahead.
No, I was going to say for sure, because I know I've heard artists talk about the fact that they didn't even want to get on TikTok, but they were told by their people, like, this is where you have to get your song out, and you have to do all of these different things. And so people come into the arts, or being like wanting to be a singer or wanting to act, and suddenly all of this extra stuff is hoisted onto them and saying you have to engage in social media in this way.
Yep.
You have to have this many followers, you have to have this many, and it's like, that's not why they went into the field in the first place. And it's a different skill set, and it's a different level of energy
Yep.
that is not the same as them using their art. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's what I mentioned in our first live, where it's just like, I think it's completely and wholly unnecessary. But I don't know. We'll see if it ends up shifting back, or because I know at least some talent is deciding not to pursue that. So we'll see how that shifts.
Yeah, I mean, do you feel like, okay, so what, if you were gonna, and actually, before I ask you that question, I just remembered I did see a question that I meant to ask you earlier, and then I forgot to. And it said, Kimura of a girl said, do you think she will write the same as before? Because I think she would change how she writes.
Yeah, I personally think that they're going to make her change the way that she writes. And I think someone else in the comments suggested something that I really liked, which was she had mentioned giving voice to the voiceless. So I think it would be really, really interesting to where maybe one of the shifts is people are actually going to be either writing into Lady Whistledown or just approaching Penn and, giving her information that needs to get out because of bad behavior, which in turn can like help the queen, obviously, because
Yeah.
she can pose judgments then on her community. So yeah, I feel like that's going to be really, really interesting. I would assume that she is going to change. It's just not going to be as many frivolous deets, and maybe it won't be so much about the marriage mart. I may be wrong. But I just think it's going to be a deeper kind of newsletter, is my assumption.
Do you think that Colin will have any influence at all?
I hope. I feel like we've already. I'm really honestly from just like being a fan and the structure of the show, and because we saw this time jump of them already having the kiddo and everything, and her introducing herself as Penelope Bridgerton, and that the writing is still happening. I'm hoping that they backtrack a little bit to, or at least have some flashbacks of showing Penn helping him with the book. And like, I'm hoping that they go back a little bit just to showcase some of the stuff that we missed, and we don't completely just do a deep dive into from this point forward. But who knows? Just with everything the way that it was edited is just really rushed. So I don't know if that's going to change, because there's a lot of criticisms there. But you know, we criticize the things we love. So
Yeah. I mean, sorry, hold on. I'm just unplugging here. I'm trying to think of another question in regards to this topic. Um, but oh, I remembered what I was going to say.
yeah.
What are the pros of gossip when it is handled properly,
Oh
in
man.
your opinion?
Um, the release and sharing of information, where again, it impacts the whole, I think is the most important thing. And I think that also stems in responsible and professional journalism, where like just like the heavier bits of information that we all just needed as a society on typically on elites who hold a lot more power and decision making over our day-to-day lives is probably the most important thing. I've never really been big on hearing about what people are doing in their personal lives when they're at that level. For an example, at like a politician or something, because it has nothing to do with the capability of doing their job.
Mm-hmm.
With the entertainment industry, again, I think the darker information that we've been seeing come to light over the past few years with different movements, particularly, you know, violence against women, things like that, all of that stuff needed to come out. It needed to come out. It hurt a lot of careers. I think there's also been an issue where at this point, I don't know about the rest of y'all, but I'm always expecting the worst. Whenever some little piece of news comes out, or like when I see someone's being talked about online, I'm like, oh Lord, what did they do? That's like my first reaction. Just because of how quickly stuff was coming out and people were kind of telling on each other. And it took me a minute before it just got a little bit, you know, more not relaxed, but just to not just expect the worst whenever someone's name was mentioned. But I think it's still a little bit triggering whenever there's like a dude mentioned. Like the other day, I was scrolling and like someone was talking about Keanu Reeves, and I was like, please no, leave him alone. He's one of the few good ones left. So yeah, but I just there's certain things that need to come out, and yes, there's usually a lot of extra information that comes out that is probably unnecessary. Yes, there's a lot of information that comes out that's untrue. However, those are important conversations that need to be had because they're about things that impact a large amount of people, an industry as a whole, or it's actions that are just horrible, that should just be looked down upon as society as a whole, those really, really bad behaviors. But it's difficult to say handled in a responsible way because I think everything is case by case. But as long as there's not too much spiraling going on, which is impossible to limit on social media, particularly on Twitter, because we see it. That's all that Twitter is now. And like Nick, I refuse to call it X. I just refuse. So yeah, but it's a hard question to answer. But I do think that there's case by case lines where when you're looking at a blip, you can decide for yourself on, does this matter to me? Is this important to me? Does this affect me? No, it doesn't. we're moving on, and I'm not partaking.
Do you think that, I mean, and this happened, I think it's been happening for a while now in social media. Do you think that people with and this could work with gossip as well, in the desire to be first, or in the desire to know things, or to be seen as someone who knows things, uh, are more apt to like put out things faster without thinking about the potential consequences of putting out certain information because you want to be a person that's viewed as in the know of things?
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's an addictive thing. I feel like that's you know, is someone being addicted to being a know-it-all. Someone, getting really excited to be, the first one to raise our hand in class. Like, I think those are all just characteristics that we're all familiar with. So with social media, there is definitely like just like a gut reaction without even really thinking about it, of just being like, I'm just gonna say it. I'm gonna put it out there, just to be the first one to put it out there, and no fact checking, no double checking, no nothing. It's just out there. And it's just like, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
And I think sometimes now, especially with AI, people are even more hyper conscious of even if you fact check now, like you before you could trust your eyes, trust your, go back. Maybe the closest thing now that we have for the ability to fact check is what was happening in real time.
Sure.
Because some things if you could almost find something in closest to the source material time frame, because things can be manipulated or manufactured after the fact sometimes.
Right.
So it's always interesting to see if you can find, for example, trying to find out what is the source material of a photo. Like, where did this come from? Why does this photo exist now? What was the original context of why this photo came to be? Those are things that sometimes people don't even ask, and just take things at face value and say, "Oh, I saw a picture." Okay, but where did that photo come from?
Which is hilarious to me in that particular instance, because we have reverse search readily available. Like,
Yeah.
like we already have the tool in order to do that, and I guess those extra 2 seconds is just that's just too much time. I don't know. I think it's just it. I think folks do it too because it's that stirring of the pot and just getting that engagement, because ultimately they're just doing it for the numbers. They're just doing it for how many responses they're getting, how many likes they're getting, how many retweets they're getting. And if they can get someone really riled up about it, oh, hallelujah. Yeah, so.
I think they have even said, right? I mean, again, gossip doesn't have to be negative. It can be a positive. Like, I mean, it can be positive information, not negative information.
Yep.
And yet what typically catches fire is anything that has a negative bent.
Oh, yeah.
And why do you think that is, Ronnie? That I do know to some degree, probably a lot of the science in our brain is because they even say that if there is, I forget how many positive comments you have to receive to counteract one negative comment.
Yeah.
I forget what science says around that, but it is very clear that negative comments have a more lasting impression than positive comments if it's not like overcome by a lot of positive comments. And that's why I think like there's folks that have been actively trying to put out positive things for Luke, just to counteract all the things that he might be exposed to, wanting to remind him that he is actually genuinely still loved and cared for by a lot of other folks.
Yeah.
And also not to say that the folks that are saying what people perceive to be negative about Luke does not actually like Luke. They could still like Luke. But I think that sometimes they might not even realize just the power of certain words sometimes, and how it lingers much longer than anything positive that people might say.
Yeah. Yeah, I can touch on those 2 points, because I do have a very specific opinion on folks that I know they're coming from a place of good intention. that amount of passion and care and concern that I saw going on about his career and certain things that he was doing and not doing and yada yada yada. But all of that back and forth and all of that chatter and commentary, the man doesn't know you. Like, regardless on how good of an intention it is, and the concept of tough love, I guess that's the word for it. I mean, he doesn't know you, so he's not going to interpret it that way. He's just going to take it as criticism because it's coming from strangers.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, these aren't people that he's friends with, that he's related to, who in opinions of people that he actually takes to heart. Like
Yeah.
he obviously cares about what his fans think. You can't be in the industry and not care. But
Mm-hmm.
everyone has said that in that particular circle, and I actually reposted a video of Sam Reed, who is the current Lestat in Interview with the Vampire, who shared that he stopped reading comments on posts because he was getting so much criticism in the first season. Because again, it's a very established book. It's a very established series. We had the movie in the 90s with Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise. Lestat has already been played. He's the third actor. And when he was initially cast, there was everyone has an opinion when someone is initially cast over a loved character. So you can imagine the kind of vitriol that was being thrown his way. And so, he said he made it a point, because during the first season, he was still reading comments and he was just like, yep, I've stopped that. Because it's paralyzing sometimes, because then they start overthinking how they're going to play a certain way, because they have to keep their emotions at the ready at any moment. And if they're in the back of their mind are obsessing over what people are saying, that just completely handicaps your performance. So they have to self-protect in order to do their job. So again, I don't blame him for creating distance with as much as he's on social media. I doubt at least I'm hoping to God he's not reading comments right now. But yeah, it's just it's that's my particular take on that instance, where like I know people are coming from a really good place and they're feeling emotional and passionate and are concerned for him, et cetera, et cetera. But fact of the matter is that it's not going to have that much of an impact because you're strangers to him. And he's got to focus on being able to do an even better job and keep doing what he's doing. So yeah, there's that. And then the other part of your question I'm sorry, what was it?
Oh my word, I don't even remember.
Yeah, it was.
I'm like the worst memory.
No, I do
have
too,
worse
dude.
memory than Luke.
I do too. I have a horrible memory. It was something to do with why the negative pops sticks more than the
Yes.
positive.
Okay. Yes.
So, and yes, you touched on it. It's all just fundamental psychology. For whatever reason, the way we are built, this is a conversation I'm going to have with my maker once, because I don't understand why it is the way it is. But yeah, you can put on an awesome outfit, look at yourself in the mirror, go out with your friends. All of your friends are giving you compliments on how you look amazing, and then you just get the comment of like, maybe you should have done this with your hair, and all of a sudden everything else goes out the window. So just in the most fundamental way, I think it all just kind of bleeds from that. So it's just really easy to just fixate on the negative stuff and spiral around the negative stuff and just completely forget about all of the positive stuff that's online. So yeah, that's just the nature of humans. I don't think that's going to stop anytime soon. But we can definitely work on it as far as to what we decide to share.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely. And I what you said earlier in the first half of your answer, and it's something I wholly agree with because I've said it a lot. It's just that relationships really dictate how receptive people are to feedback.
Yeah.
And and so when folks think that they're able to somehow get to Luke by acting in particular ways and that'll get the point to him, I don't think that that's actually how it works.
No.
Because it is, as far as Luke is concerned, it's a bunch of strangers, a bunch of faceless, nameless folks that are just putting words on a page, but have zero genuine, real relationship with him. They don't. Luke said in an interview, and that he keeps everything that's hard in his life off of social media because he has those conversations with his friends and his family and his loved ones.
Yep.
And I always am amused by how Luke always loves to say it in those
Yeah.
three sections of friends, and he tends to say it in that order: friends, family, and loved ones. But I do find that curious, but at the same time, I feel it like it's a Lukeism to say it that way. But that's what he said in that article, that people are not going to know how he struggles because he's not putting that out publicly.
Yeah.
Because he does not feel like it has any value for folks to know that parts of himself, because the ones that are going to have those conversations, the ones that are going to have those heart to hearts with him are going to be friends, family, and loved ones. And that's the only folks that will have an impact on him. So I think people want to have more of an impact on Luke's life, and than we genuinely do. And obviously, I do understand that if enough fans turn on him, that it can have that repercussion.
Yeah.
Like there can be a little blimp, a little hurt. But also people have very short attention spans. And the reality is right now, people are like, I'm not going to say that people, well, I do think people are to some degree bored because they're waiting for something else.
Yeah.
But when when people get something new to look at, all people's attention shifts fairly quickly sometimes. And so, yeah, there might be some detrimental stuff, some hurtful things on the short run. But because Luke does actually have good relationships with the people he works with, and he is people who have worked with him, not people who don't work with him, not people who watch from a third party kind of outsider look, all say that he's wonderful to work with. So I don't think that fans having a concern about his personal life or any of those things ultimately is the thing that's going to ever harm his career.
No, yeah, he has to do something truly heinous, where we've seen examples of that, where people get fired. He has to do something absolutely just unforgivable in order for that to really impact his opportunities. And as I say, it's still enough noise to where, like, if enough noise was created of just like like some sort of negative fervor, it would mostly have to revolve around his capabilities, how easy he is to work with, if he's a nightmare on set, that kind of stuff. Like that's where it would really, really turn. But clearly he's not. So, yeah.
Yeah. The overall sentiment I've heard consistently, and even from folks that actually meet him, right?
Yeah.
Even if it's briefly, it's been pleasant.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So and when Nicola says, she's like, you're going to meet actors that have egos. He's not one of them.
Right.
And so, and I trust Nicola in that sense. Now, I did say to folks that this was going to only last until 11. So I just want to thank Roni again for joining me today. And any final words from you, Roni, before we head off?
Well, I was going to say, I actually have 15 minutes if you want to do another 15 minutes. I don't know.
Oh, okay. Okay, because I was concerned about your time. So yeah, sure. I mean, is there anything specifically that you want to touch on in these last 15 minutes that we have with folks?
Well, I mean, just if anyone else has any additional questions, I don't know if you want to just take a look. Maybe we can wrap up on something.
Yeah, let's see if I think Kimura of a girl said has. Oh, okay. So actually, I'll go with this one. User with a lot of numbers right behind us said, "Do you think Luke Thompson will be asked to join socials to promote his season after all this fallout?"
We talked about that briefly in the first live, which is I was because I was talking about that with a couple of my other girlfriends, and we were thinking that either they would have him and Claudia do temporary accounts, and I had asked the question if anyone knew or had any history of knowing if Claudia and Luke T are the type to, take behind the scenes shots, at least for themselves, just to collect memories. Because if they are already doing that, then they have kind of a library to pull from that could inevitably be shared. But if they don't have them create their own accounts, they may have a social media team that creates temporary accounts, or they just end up just using the main Bridgerton account and just sharing the content there. I would be actually very impressed if they don't tell them to create separate accounts, because I think that would be moving in the right direction. Like, don't force people to create social media accounts if they've lived their entire lives without having social media. Because it's just like, yeah, like we all know at this point, we all know that social media is created to become addictive. Like, that's the whole point of the algorithm, is to keep us clicking, looking, so on and so forth. And I think a lot of us in the fandom in particular have admitted that we have not been online as much as we have with Nick and Luke. Because, my God, I was actually at a point where I was like limiting my intake and had myself on a schedule. That all went out the window. So, yeah, as soon as they came on the scene, like they just, it's an addiction for sure. So,
You know what, Ronnie, you reminded me of? Back in the day, I had my niece put a password on my TikTok, so I would only be on TikTok for 30 minutes. Obviously, I removed it eventually, but I lasted like a good, I don't know how, like maybe even well, a year might be too generous, but maybe I've lasted like 6 months to 8 months without like stopping it. So I was really
so
proud of
I,
myself.
I lasted legit 2 weeks. 2 weeks. And then they came on my screen and I was like, nope, first thing in the morning, last thing at night. Yep.
Kurtzing had asked about the final date for the views. So it is. I still have never gotten an official date. I've heard September 11, I've heard September 13, and I've heard September 16. I'm more apt to believe it's September 13 out of all of them, but and I would say about the part one views, I'm just gonna say just watch the whole season each time, because they said that they're not starting the 91 days until the full season came out. So the full season is what matters. So please just watch the whole season. Watch it in 1.5 speed if you want, but watch it. I mean, I try to do it every morning, as y'all who watch my stories usually get a story from me saying, "Hey, I'm turning it on." And right now it's like, what is it on? It's right now it's Violet with Lord Anderson in their house. I forgot what episode that one is at right now. Okay, sorry, Ronnie. Was there anything additional that you had wanted to say there?
No, I was actually wondering if you had anything else about like the show in particular, like the whole Lady Whistledown thing.
Um, yeah. Well, I mean, do I? I think okay. Here's the thing, right? Uh, when when Penelope decided to do the story on Claudia, on
Eloise.
Eloise, uh, like her motivation, she had reasoning in her brain. Do you think that now that she realizes the impact of all of those things, that she could have made a different decision while still protecting her identity, or do you feel like that was her only option, genuine option available to her?
Wow. Um,
Or should she have given up her anonymity?
That's tough. I mean, obviously she was mainly thinking about herself. She was because if she really wanted to, like, if it was just like an off the cuff, I'm gonna save my friend, she would have just outed herself.
Mm-hmm.
But in all honesty, her relationship with Eloise, as much as we love them together and as good friends as they appear to be, Eloise is very insular. Like she never really paid attention to Penelope. Like she did. Like I don't understand how you can be friends like from a very like from childhood, grow up and not have any idea that your best friend is in love with your brother.
Mm.
Like I don't understand. Like are you not looking at her at all? Like literally, it's written all over her face. So I don't genuinely believe that Eloise was really that. And honestly, she got called out by even Cressida of just like she's not a very good friend. Like she's not very observant. Like she's so cerebral and worried about like these big picture things that I don't think that she's worried about the details or really like she thinks that the stuff that she's worried about is just so big and important that it overtakes everything else. So she may have not even been capable of noticing these kinds of more frivolous emotions because she's so like not anti-love, but she's just so anti-marriage that I think she probably just shut down that part of her brain, those receptors of like being able to pick up on these signals. So I think that plays a big part in it on Penelope making her decision because that doesn't go unnoticed.
Do you think that she could have told Eloise before printing and had maybe her and Eloise think of a different solution together?
Well, that's just it. It's just like why that also says a lot about their relationship. It's like why wouldn't you tell your best friend about this? Like clearly she didn't trust her enough or something. There had to have been
Well,
a
she did speak it pretty loudly in that party.
yeah. So like
About
yeah. So like it's just one of those things where like there had to have been a barrier there,
mm,
something subconscious where for
mm,
both of them, you know.
yeah.
And again, this is all stuff that we have to just fill in the blanks on because they're not explaining this or not showing this. We're just kind of having to fill in what the motivations could potentially be, which I guess is part of the fun because it's all like a psychological experiment anyway. But
And people like mystery. See, that's the thing that I think there is beauty in mystery.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
just when people sometimes go awry with some of the mystery.
yeah.
But like, I do love mysteries. I do love clues. I do like trying to figure things out. But it's usually with the hope that it's something beneficial at the tail end, not
Sure.
not something negative.
Yeah, but I think it definitely could have gone different ways. Like I think if they had had the type of relationship where she really trusted Eloise, she could have told Eloise. They could have come up with a solution. She could have stated that there was someone in the ton that was interacting with this boy without naming her.
Yeah, so many options. Yeah,
Yeah, like
you didn't have to say the name.
yeah, there's so many options there, but I think it's because she had already established the fact that she was freely naming people. I think
Hmm.
people probably would have been like, well, that's a cop out. You clearly know who it is, and you're not telling us who it is.
That's also true.
Yeah, so it's just, as I say, we can spiral on and on and on about all of the different possibilities, but I do think that ultimately she made the decision to save her own skin. Because again, she could have easily also just been like, okay, it's me.
Yeah.
Yeah, but she didn't. So,
Yeah. I think we're going to end in this one final question from Kristen. Said, what do you think the parallels are to the fandom on TikTok?
parallels with Whistledown?
Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing with Lady Whistledown, the handling of gossip, all of those things. What do you think are the parallels?
I think that the main takeaway from this season, which I mentioned in my video last night, which people are getting lost in the sauce, is that whole point of showcasing that moving to a more responsible way of disseminating information related to in that is in the vein of being gossip should really be taken into account and considered, because again, we're talking about a show where that is one of the main themes. And for whatever reason, we just all went down or at least we saw the fandom going down the lane of like, let's just be as messy as possible without taking into account of like one of the main themes on the show is being a little bit more responsible, because it's never good. It's never a good idea in the end. As much as it's kind of glorified, and we've gone through 3 seasons of Lady Whistledown sharing, the gossip and how the ton functions and everything. She's clearly gotten to the point where it's just not a good thing. It impacted her personal life. She hurt people that she loved. And it's time to just be more responsible with it. Like that's the main thing. So
Yeah. Um, I was gonna say something in regards to that and totally forgot what I was gonna say. But yeah, no, I think it is this reality that, oh, I remember now. It's this question I always ask: is this action going to get us closer to what we say we want to see happen?
right.
And many times it really drives things further away.
Yep.
So that's why there were times where I'm like, I'm not quite sure. So there's times when I definitely do feel like it's outside agitators rather than like Luke and Nicola fans or Lucilla fans, because I'm like, these actions are actually harming the chance. Well, I don't know if it's harming the chances of Lucilla, because I don't think fandom is going to affect that one way or the other, in the sense of, I mean, it can in the sense, I suppose, that people can start feeling awkward around each other, but I just don't think that that's, or I would like to believe that's not going to be the case, but maybe it does. Maybe there's just so much weirdness that the fandom chooses to create that it causes them to have to act in in ways that they would not have regularly chosen. But I would like to believe that's not going to be the case.
Well,
I would like to believe.
that's one of the other reasons why I'm hoping that they're not perpetually online, because the amount of times that they're tagged on stuff that could potentially be really, really awkward, even though it's well-meaning, we don't want them to get tired of it.
Yeah.
We don't want them to get annoyed by it. It's like I'm pretty, as we mentioned previously, I'm pretty sure they already know. They're aware of all of the back and forth and all of the shipping, and again, having everyone in their lives in their day to day also commenting on their amazing chemistry. Like they know. So a stranger online isn't telling them anything new. And they don't need to hear it, 5 million times. And Nick has already said that she can't get online peacefully anymore because now her timeline is all her.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, it's just one of those things where it would be preferable if people just used hashtags instead of tagging them. But I mean, that's also difficult to control. So
Yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of one of my final thoughts. Any final words before we head off for the day?
No, thanks guys. I'm off to a doctor's appointment, so that's fun.
Have a good one, Ronnie.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Yeah. And folks, I will be putting this up on YouTube once I'm able to. I would think that as long as I'm able to upload it, hopefully I'll be able to upload it in a few hours. So and just for you, your question about the Luke account, I do think that's not real. I know it's seems to be a certified account, but things on X these days I just don't think are verifiable in the same way that it used to be. It's not the same way. Lolly said, can you post your YouTube link? I can't find you, please. Lolly, it's on my profile page. And you could also search under Bocce Go Hawks on YouTube. All right, folks. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.